Thanks for staying with us. News Today continues with the story of the day, which is the commissioning of these 307 ambulances at Black Star Square in Accra. I am Daniel Daze, and I'm in the studio with Kojo Yankson, and we are having a very interesting conversation, Kojo, about the political import of this particular decision that has been made, or this commission that is taking place. Yeah. Yes, there is also a pushback, isn't it? Because already there was a bit of complaints after the president announced that the commission will take place in January, with his political opponents alleging that all this is because they want it to be as close to the election as possible. Well,
if that was what they wanted, they could have delayed this a bit more. They would have had good reason, because clearly we still have questions about how it's going to be administered. So that there would have been, sufficient excuse, maybe not reason, but excuse, if they had wanted to extend it even further and get it closer to the election. I don't think it's a plus that the party has pushed this into the election year. I don't think it's a plus at all. I don't think any person who's been analytical and soberly non-political about this would consider it a plus, because it's a delay. The delay. Lives are being lost while these ambulances are not out there saving them. So, I mean, there's been an accident, a massive accident, which has spawned a whole campaign deaths. Here. 34 deaths. And those people were put in the backs of abubuya and pickups and carted to hospitals. God knows how many other lives would have been saved if there had been ambulances.
It's indeed a very important question.
So for me, I don't see it as a plus that they've delayed this long.
The NDC opposition in Parliament mentioned that this is what government thinks, and they think it's a plus if they do it as close to the election as possible. Let's take a listen to Kwabena Mintah making this point. We'll come back.
To pack the ambulances without serving its purpose, how will the country benefit from the ambulances? And I've heard from the minister in charge of special initiative, and she says that they are going to do the distribution in 2020. From now, and in fact, from the time...
The minority NDC gave government 3 days to release the ambulances, some of which had been parked on the premises of Parliament. But Minister of Health, Kweku Agyemang-Manu, responded that the vehicles were being retrofitted.
And all the specifications and all the things that are in there. As I speak, from my check with the ministry that is procuring the vehicles for the ambulance service, the suppliers, about 5 of them, to bring in 307. Right? They have not handed over the vehicles to the ministry yet, meaning pre-delivery inspection and things haven't been done. The minister, on my last check, was on Monday yesterday, is away in Turkey, still looking at some of them, trying to look at how we will maintain them with spare parts and all that.
And it came as no surprise that the issue was put to the president, Nana Akufo-Addo, at his recent encounter with the media.
The ambulances, the Minister for Special Development Initiatives, who's been responsible for bringing them, told me about a month, 6 weeks ago, that some of the ambulances were in, should she distribute it? And I said no, she shouldn't. She'll wait till they all come in. So one day we can distribute them all at the same time to all 275 constituencies. I saw myself getting into a tremendous amount of issues if you started distributing some and others didn't get it.
And that day where all of those ambulances can be distributed at the same time is today. So, Kojo, you have to admit that there's a penchant of politicians in Ghana to turn it into a football, kick it back and forth, and make a, an argument out of it.
Absolutely, and they didn't fail us on that front this time around either. Every party trying to angle in on this. I would have thought that the opposition would have pick their battles better. Honestly, ambulances is not something that they ought to come and try and claim moral high ground on. They really don't have it. For 8 years, their party was in power, and we know how many ambulances they bought during that time. We know how many ambulances they spent money on, which actually ended up operating and saving human lives. We know. So when another party is in power and they're trying to do what they couldn't, you would kind of have assumed that they would take a different approach in playing their role as opposition. But having said that, you don't then exonerate this government for their repeated failure to bring these ambulances into commission, into operation. Over a long period of time, they have also tried. And by the way, why did they abandon the 200 ambulance project that they inherited from the previous government? Why are those ambulance parts or whatever they are still at the port? Government can't clear goods from the ports. Someone has deliberately made a decision to leave them there. What a waste. So instead of them, coming for funds for having completed something they ought to have done a long time ago, someone should be asking them, how can you be wasting our money by leaving these other 200, which are partly procured, by leaving that project abandoned? We need as many ambulances as we can have. 307 is nowhere near enough. It's a step in the right direction, but we need more. So we ought to be asking that question. How could you waste, what was left to you, what you inherited, and then go and spend more of our money, the money that constituencies could have used for other things, go and spend that on new ambulances. So none of the parties walks away clean from this one, which is amusing when you consider how much mud they are slinging at each other. But then, I mean, that's not a surprise. That's what political
parties do. Globally.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we have to take a look, though, at what this means for, delivery of healthcare in the nation generally, considering the fact that this always shocks me when I find out that it hasn't changed. Only 3% of our country's population is above the age of 68.
Yeah.
And that really tells you a story that we are not growing old enough, we are not healthy enough. And so the system of healthcare delivery must be looked at, and must be looked at very, very seriously. The last Ghana Connect, the conversation was about road accidents and about how it's a public health disaster, really, because more than 2,000 people are dying.
Yeah.
And the role that ambulances could play in, like you were saying, on the Cape Coast Highway, taking victims of road or injured persons in road accidents to get health care.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Absolutely. And now that we're getting 307 ambulances, the conversation has suddenly become crucial once again, particularly regarding what happens if you're fortunate enough to be picked up by one of these ambulances and you are in need of emergency care. So they picked you up, right? Because your constituency has one. So you called the number, it went to the dispatch team, and they sent one to you in your constituency. So it picks you up. Where is it taking you? Where is the nearest free bed? Where is the nearest hospital that has a bed? Is it in your constituency? Is it beyond your constituency? And are there beds there? Does this system, this ambulance dispatch system, does it have a way of tapping into the hospitals to know where the beds are? Is there such a system in Ghana anyway? If I ask someone in the Ghana Health Service today or at the Ministry of Health, can you tell me where all the free beds are today? Do they have an answer to that question? So now that we have ambulances, it's an important first step. And that's why I'm saying the conversation has suddenly become crucial, because now we have to solve that problem so that these ambulances are effective. Because imagine that now that we have these ambulances, we're going to fuel them, they'll pick up people who are dying and in need of care, and then they're driving around looking for the nearest free bed. That becomes another waste, which will also cause loss of lives. So that
avoidable loss of life.
Absolutely. So even though we spent all this money on 307 ambulances, it won't result in saving lives unless we integrate the system with what is happening in our accident and emergency centers across the nation. Somebody needs to take that step and create that centralized system, where we can allocate beds on the go when an accident happens and ensure that people are taken to the nearest free beds, the nearest emergency center that can accommodate them, so that lives are genuinely saved.
And this is something that can be done with technology, really. Looking at exactly how we can know that this number of beds are free in this facility, that really is not asking too much. One of the questions that have been raised, however, is our maintenance culture, and what that means for some of these ambulances that will come. Thankfully, the Ghana Ambulance Service has signed a 5-year service and maintenance agreement with the suppliers to ensure servicing and maintenance of the ambulances over the 5 years. And it's been known that on the average, the life cycle of an ambulance is 5 years.
Now that tells you two things. The first thing it tells you is that we really ought to start procuring the next batch of ambulances now. If we don't, then 5 years from now, we'll be playing these games where, you know, we're delaying the launch because we don't have enough ambulances, or we haven't retrofitted them, or we haven't done all kinds of things. We haven't planned where we're going to park them. If we don't start procuring and planning now. That's the first thing. The second thing is this. I want to know how that maintenance contract will work. So from day one, are they the ones who are going to be managing, you know, if you send an ambulance up to the north or to some corner of the country where the roads are terrible, like the Volta region, where your shocks are probably going to run out earlier than if you're running it on the smooth streets of Accra or Kumasi. Who is managing?
Some parts,
yes, indeed, not where my house is. So who is managing this process? Who is ensuring that we are aware of where this ambulance is running? So we're keeping an eye on it so that we know that their tires might wear out earlier, their shocks might, you know, need replacing quicker, you know, or perhaps there will be more dust which will get into filters and so forth, so we need to replace them on a more regular basis. Are those details catered for in this management contract? Does that management contract even include the things I'm talking about? You know, like oil changes and all of that. Because for it to last 5 years as an ambulance, you have to ensure that all these things are being done on a regular basis at the right time. And you can't have a general same interval for all of them around the country, because you'll be running under different conditions. Plus, where does this 5-year thing come from? Is it a Ghanaian standard or an international standard? Because if it's an international standard, we have to factor in the Ghanaian conditions.
It is international standard.
So are we sure that in Ghana an ambulance can remain functional for 5 years?
It's a good question because of our roads.
Indeed.
And other conditions that pertain here.
Yeah.
There's also the question of staffing for this, because I think that's actually the most critical element of the entire service delivery program, the human element. The people who will be sitting in the ambulances as emergency medical technicians and drivers, the people who would be taking people to the hospital and handling those patients, they are the ones who will really be saving lives. And Kojo Ponkoba, the information minister, has said that 450 emergency medical technicians out of the 575 who were cleared for recruitment have been trained. And so over 300 EMT drivers and support staff and 30 dispatchers will be posted to the 275 constituencies nationwide after the commissioning. In fact, Kojo, let's listen to one of these EMT drivers. We'll be back.
I decided to do this one because of the training that you're having in driving skills.
Okay. So you believe yourself you can drive well?
I believe myself because we were trained to drive boldly.
Okay. All right. So when I see the ambulance driver drive past me, I feel like their speed is too high. Is that it?
Yeah, sometimes. Normally, because of some of the condition of the patient that is inside the ambulance, we need to get to the hospital quick for them to attend to the patient. Okay. Yeah. So that's why sometimes you can see an ambulance run with speed.
Okay.
Yep.
Yes. Now, what is the most dangerous part of your work?
The most dangerous part of it is sometimes the vehicles on the way, the trotro drivers and the taxi drivers, including other private drivers, sometimes if they are hearing the siren, they don't want to give way for the ambulance to go. So sometimes if you are not careful, before you realize, you involve yourself into accident.
Okay. Yeah. Which one is more dangerous? Driving in the morning, driving at dawn, or driving in the evening?
The more dangerous way is driving in the morning.
Okay, why?
Driving in the morning, usually by that time, everybody is busy.
Okay.
Yeah, those going to work, they are all busy.
Okay.
And some of the drivers, you don't know where they pass before they are going to work. So everybody is busy, and now that you are telling them to give way for you to pass, so That one.
They don't mind.
Yes, they will not mind.
Okay, what do you do before you move?
Yes, I pray to God, because sometimes there are some patients that you pick. You don't know what is following that patient. And you'll be driving something close like human being before you realize it's not human being. Before you realize, you throw the car somewhere. Yeah. And you involve yourself into accident.
So
you the one that is saving life, then you become a casualty.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's an EMT driver. It's still live on Joy News today. We are monitoring activities at the Black Star Square, where 307 ambulances will be commissioned and distributed. What you have in your shot now is a uniformed guard, a security parade, and the President Akufo-Addo will be joining that ceremony shortly. In the meantime, though, let's take you to the Central Region, where executives and members of the opposition National Democratic Congress are picketing the offices of the Electoral Commission. They are opposing the EC's decision to compile a new voters register. Richard Kojo-Nyanko is our man on the ground, and he joins us on the line. Richard, tell us about what's happening there.
Also, the number up to about 100, they were clad in red outfits. Some of them too are in black outfits with some red armbands. They have diverse inscriptions. Let me run by you some of the inscriptions that are here. EC, we need peace. The new register is a waste. Let us all protect the public purse. It's listening to the voice of people. And these are among other inscriptions on plasters that these people are facing, that it's a wasteful venture the government is doing, because that money, they mentioned the amount of money, 440 million Ghana cedis, could be put to some profitable use. They feel that it was a fake register that was used in just under the District Assembly elections, and they did not understand why the need for a new register, and so they
right.
I don't think.
Okay, Richard. Richard, tell us if any notable members of the NDC from the headquarters, any national executives were there. Richard, reposition yourself. We can hardly hear you.
Okay, well, can you hear me now?
It's much better. Go ahead.
Okay, so these are basically the NDC regional executives, led by its regional chairman, EKT Ado, the regional secretary, the regional organizer, and other people from other constituencies who joined the people in Cape Coast to march to the EC offices. They say that this one is rehearsal for a lot of the things they intend doing for government to back down on the new register that the Electoral Commission is going to do.
Right, Richard Kojo-Nyanko, thank you. But tell us about the security. Yes, the security arrangements that have been made.
So I can count up to about 30 police personnel that are here in their midst, and they are saying that they are going to protect them, because they came to secure some permits from them that they were going to do this kind of activity. And so the security is on top of it here.
Thank you very much, Richard Kojo-Nyanko. Let's now hear the Central Region Chairman of the NDC, EKT Ado.
Yeah, we are here today for very simple reasons. We are at the premises of the Electoral Commission. You know, you have addressed the Electoral Commission, expressed our views about what is happening and so on and so forth. So this morning, we decided to picket at this office to register a protest against the new voters register, which is to commence on the 18th of April, according to the Electoral Commission. We are opposed to the new register because, in the first place, we felt that the government of Akufo-Addo must be able to prioritize the development of this nation. You know, we cannot use such a huge amount of money for the purpose of just registering people for elections. just about 1 month, 10 days ago, we used the old register to conduct a very successful district level elections. And according to CODIO, which is an NGO, there were only 10% difficulties, implying that this 10% could be fixed before December 2020. So for us, we believe that it is senseless to spend such a huge amount of money for a new voters register. You understand? Now, we have come here to register this protest. We are part of Ghana. Demonstrations have been going on elsewhere. We felt that maybe before demonstrations, if it is necessary at all, we must let the Electoral Commission here know that we are part of the process and that we shall continue to oppose this new register until sanity prevails in this country. Somebody may say that, well, it has been approved by Parliament. Parliament has approved the budget. Maybe you will ask me, that's why I'm saying it. Parliament has approved the budget. So there is no need for anybody to question the authority of Parliament. But we are saying that the parliamentarians were elected by the people. And as you know, we have a system of governance now which is based on majoritarian parliamentary system. They have a large number of, the MPP has a large number of parliamentarians, comfortable members of parliament. And they can take any decision that they like.
So live on News Today, and the minority in Parliament has meanwhile charged government to immediately deploy some 8 mobile clinic vans procured by the NDC administration to bridge the gap between urban and rural health. Ranking member on the Health Committee, Kwabena Minta-Kando, argues the vans are rotting away at the Kolebu Teaching Hospital, whilst healthcare delivery in rural areas remain poor. The specialized vans were designed for general medicine, ophthalmology, dentistry, and audiology assessment. Mr. Kando wants governments to put the vans to good use. He's been speaking to the press after assessing the condition of the vans. He joins us on the line. Mr. Kando, why now?
Yeah, thank you very much. We've had a lot of information both from the traditional media and the social media about the state of the mobile clinics. And so today we decided, we were on recess. Today is our first meeting. And so we decided to go and have a first-hand information on the state of the Unyanovas. And my brother, it was a very pathetic scene. Very pathetic, very disheartening, to say the least. One thing we must all realize is that any property of the state is bought by the taxpayers' money, and therefore we must put them to good use. That is the only time we'll have full benefit of any property bought by the taxpayers' money. These plans were bought about 6 years ago, and before and during 2016, these vans were in full operation. When we got there, and we had interactions with the security guys, he said for the past more than 3 years, nobody has even been there to ignite the engine. And Kolebu is very close to the sea. I mean, it will interest you to know that these are not everything. We had the opportunity to enter one of the vans. I think that the night security men probably on the engine, the generators at the back and on the air conditioners. These are still in good shape. So we wonder why the government will park these vans there for more than 3 years, whilst the rural area, the hard-to-reach area, the hinterland, need these kinds of services. People in my constituency, for example, from Anyafuki, who have issues about their teeth, who have dental issues. Traveling from Anyafuki in my constituency to Kumasi or to Kolebu or to any major healthcare facility, even the transportation alone is a problem.
Okay.
These vans, for some time ago, were being deployed to these areas to give them proper healthcare. So I believe that we have no excuse whatsoever to allow these vans to rot away.
So, Mr. Kando, you said that these vans were in use in 2016?
Before and during 2016.
Before and during 2016. Where were they being used?
Well, I had the opportunity to see some of them in Western region. If you go to the net, I believe that you have some videos and photos when they brought them, when they were in use. I mean, I had the opportunity to see some of them in the Western region. I come from the Western region.
Yes, so I come from the Western region as well.
Yeah, so it's not a permanent. I mean, let me come in here. It's not a
right.
I mean, they are not supposed to be at permanent posts. They are mobile clinics. So they move from one region to the other. And I'm telling you that I had the opportunity.
Who were those operating them?
I mean, people from the Ministry of Health. And those days, mind you, I was even not the ranking member, but I saw health professionals operating those vans.
No, but you are the ranking member now. So in your research, did you find out which unit was operating them and why that unit left them as Kolebu Teaching Hospital?
As I speak to you now, we have been trying so hard to find answers to these questions, and nobody is coming forward to answer.
Mr. Kando, you were in power for 8 years. You were a notable member of the NDC. The former minister cannot tell you which people were driving the vans?
I'm not saying that I don't know which people were driving the vans. I'm saying to you that I had the opportunity to witness the services of these vans, and health professionals were mining these vans.
Assigned by who? Which units were they working in?
Whether they came from the Ministry of Health or a specific, health facility, what I saw was that these vans were deployed to various communities, hard-to-reach areas, and they were operating. And that is what the common Ghanaian wants. That is what the common Ghanaian... These vans were bought by the taxpayers' money. If they are put to good use, that's it. That's what we want.
Right. So I'm simply trying to understand, Mr. Akando, what work they were doing in the past so that we know which offices to go for answers from.
That, listen, except of course you didn't listen, I'm saying to you that these are mobile vans. The rationale behind procuring these vans were to go to the hard-to-reach areas for outreach programs.
That was not my question, Mr. Akando. My question was,
so what's your question?
Was operating them when you were in power?
And I'm saying that these vans were under the Ministry of Health.
Which unit, Mr. Akando, was the question?
They were, I saw, what do you call it, health professionals manning those
under
vans.
Which
so
unit?
What is important here, let us not divert attention. What is important is that the Ministry of Health were in charge of these procurement. They were in charge of, deploying these vans. And today they were in operation, and today they are not in operation. We have a specific ministry which is responsible for issues concerning health. So anything about health, we have somebody who is directly responsible.
Right.
So this is not in doubt at all, and that's why we didn't rush into commenting on it until we have gone there to assess the situation ourselves, and we have first-hand information. So this one, there is no, bone of contention at all.
Why did you choose today to do this?
Hello?
Why did you choose today?
I've explained to you that we have had information about them, we've asked questions about them, and then we have decided to, get the first-hand information. And I've also indicated to you that we were on recess. Today is our first meeting. And that we decided to go there and have the first-hand information. Any day could have been used, and it's so be that today has been chosen to visit that particular facility. And
so there's no relation between.
Go there, what is important is that is it true that those vans have been abandoned? Yes, it is true. Is it true that those vans were procured by the taxpayers' money? Yes, it is true. Are we having full value for money? No, we are not having value for money. Who is responsible? The minister responsible for health must come out to answer questions. Why have we left them to rot away? Is it true that they are rotting away? For me, in my humble opinion, these are legitimate issues. But as whether when you have gone there I mean, why didn't you go there yesterday? Why have you gone there today? For me, in my humble opinion, you may disagree with me. There are non-issues. The issues that confront the common Ghanaian in my constituency is that van is parked there, rotting away, while the people need the services of those vans.
Kwamna Mensah-Kando, thank you very much.
Yes, Amasa.
Thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Right, that was the ranking member of the Health Committee of Parliament. And you're still live on the JoyNews channel. I'm here in the studio with Kojo Yankson. Quite the interesting conversation there we had with Kwamna Mensah-Kando.
Yeah, I was asking in my head the same questions you asked him. So a unit at the Ministry of Health was running these ambulances.
Mini vans, mobile vans. They're not exactly the same.
Thank you, yeah. A unit at the Ministry of Health was running these mobile vans. According to Mr. Mensah-Kando, this was happening while his government was in office. But he doesn't know which unit they are. So how were they instructed to go out there and start running these ambulances? How did it happen? How did the ambulances start working back then? How can there not be any line of responsibility,
or chain of command,
any chain of command? How is it impossible to identify which department or unit was running them? If they have been asked to stop running, again, someone must have issued that instruction for this department to stop running the ambulances. How can we not know, which department or unit was asked to stop running them?
Even more baffling is that the Health Committee, the minority in Parliament, waited to gather information before coming out to the media.
But they don't have the information.
We'll take a break for business. This is JoyNews Today. We'll be right back.